Hello and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be beginning our work on Act 5 of King Lear. Yesterday we completed our analysis of OTN 4, analyzing Act 4 of King Lear. Today we're going to be beginning our work on Act 5, looking specifically at a SQ3R for the text under consideration, just simply an overview of what occurs in the play. And then we'll be digging into the details and the meaning of those events on Thursday and Friday as we conclude our study of Lear. On Friday, you will receive your test prompt. You'll have the weekend to prepare a response to that prompt. You can write that response on Monday and Tuesday, and it'll be due on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Of course, you don't have to work on it over the weekend. If you would like to simply rest on your weekend, you can collect and develop your response on Monday and then write it on Tuesday and submit it by Tuesday at 3 p.m. It's up to you, okay? So before we get into our OTN, let's just quickly run through the rest of the top of the week announcements. First of all, remember your discussion grade procedure. Second of all, make sure that you're completing OTNs 4 and 5. All right, next, you need to make sure that you complete your progress check. I know that there was some problems with the AP Classroom website yesterday. For those of you in the AP class that couldn't complete your progress check because of the web issues, clearly, I'll give you an extension. Get that done when you can. When it is done, I'll check it, and you will receive full credit. Okay. Aside from that, our unit tests coming up on Tuesday at 3 p.m. So you need to make sure that you email me confirmation of OTNs 1 through 5 by Friday at 3 p.m. All right, so we'll be finishing OTN 5 in class on Friday. Your class notes should be concluded at the end of that class. You go back, shore up those notes, make sure that they satisfactorily answer the prompts, and then you can email me saying that you completed OTNs 1 through 5. Contextualizing all this is your work on the quarter 4 essay and your MW for the road. Okay, so we should have a clear understanding of how things are wrapping up here. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, let's go ahead and jump back into Act 5, all right, and conduct our SQ3R for the text under consideration, okay? So we want to begin by just simply surveying the basic details of the text. Who's the speaker? Well, it's obviously the characters. What's the genre, the style? It's tragedy, okay? A tragedy, notably, is a play that is an exploration of the meaning of some form or fashion of human suffering. Okay, so tragedy is not a play in which the protagonist just stubs his toe over and over again, or accidentally chops his hand off. Right? Oh, what a tragedy! Right? Okay, no. A tragic play is this sort of distinctly human endeavor to try and understand what the nature of suffering, what it means that we suffer, as we kind of suffer together and watch individuals suffer in ways that correspond to or resonate or are grander versions of our own mundane sufferings, okay? So that's kind of the point of a tragedy. And the fifth act of a tragedy, notably, all right, so what's the title of our text? What's Act 5? Okay, the fifth act of a tragedy is supposed to bring the tragic plot to a conclusion. Okay, so if you consider like Oedipus the King or Othello, the fifth act of those plays brings a kind of conclusion to the inevitable suffering that was coming for that protagonist. They reckon with their wrongdoings, and as they reckon with those wrongdoings, all right, it evokes a sense of catharsis in the audience because the audience looks at this protagonist who they can relate to. It's very important that the protagonist flaw, their problem, is something that is that resonates with the flaws of the audience, the misunderstandings or miscalculations of the audience. Because if the tragic hero is bad in a way that does not resonate with the audience, the suffering that comes to that tragic hero doesn't evoke pity from the audience. Okay, rather it seems like they're simply an individual getting precisely what they deserve. They're a bad guy, and bad guys get bad things. Okay, that doesn't evoke pity. Rather, the pity is incurred because the protagonist is someone who we understand is flawed, but we also sort of see the reasoning behind the flaw. We see why the flaw is there, and we see that flaw in ourselves, all right? And that kind of pity and fear evoked by the catharsis is that the tragic hero is suffering in a way that we understand we deserve to some extent. And we are relieved and take hope in the fact that there is time for us. When the fictional world closes, all right, when it's over and we return to reality, our lives, okay, there is a sense in which the suffering that we have witnessed has not yet come to pass to us. All right, and that there is time for us to realign ourselves with reality. This amalgam of fear and pity and hope is what we call catharsis. Okay, it's a kind of an amalgam emotional experience that weirdly good tragedy evokes. Okay, and it's something that, despite the fact that the tragedy is bad and has all kinds of suffering in it, that human beings who don't like to suffer, for some reason, for a really long time, have been telling desperately sad stories in order to help give us a kind of grip on the meaning of the suffering that animates our lives. Okay, so in this tragic plot, it would seem one way of viewing Lear's the logic of or meaning of Lear's suffering, okay, is to say the tragic hero who misjudged his world and considered himself to be lord of it defied its most basic laws. Laws that are, like Jefferson says in the Declaration of Independence, self-evident and generally revealed. And that law basically can be summarized as human beings are valuable and deserve to be treated justly. Okay? Human beings are valuable and deserve to be treated lovingly. Okay? And when one does not align their behavior, their life, and their worldview with that very simple premise, that suffering is the result. All right, that individual is punished. All right, death comes to them. All right, and so following that logic, right, Lear suffers the loss of all his authority, a loss of the honor that he thought was due him, and the loss of his very sanity. Okay, and so, and then to sort of emphasize the weight of Cordelia's love and grace, note the fact that Lear's incomplete self-recognition, characterized in Act 3, okay, injects Cordelia's extension of grace and love to Lear with additional significance because Lear couldn't have earned it. Okay, Cordelia follows the law of love, loving Lear graciously, as love entails grace, described in our previous lectures. Okay, and this restores Lear to a kind of sanity, and also offers him a new kind of self-understanding, in which he has reconciled himself with reality, regained his sanity. Okay, and achieved a kind of basic sane worldview, and that being, all right, that he is but a humble mortal who is, like all men, compelled to treat all men as if they have inherent value, that they should be treated as neighbors, that they should be done unto as we would have done unto us, that we cannot simply do as we will and suffer no consequences. Okay, so it would follow logically then, therefore, that the fifth act should explore, okay, the kind of logical consequences for the other characters who are equally lawless. All right, Goneril, Regan, Edmund, they all, like Lear and Gloucester, okay, prior to his kind of redemption, should be punished for their wanton disobedience of that which they were made to do. Okay, that's what would make sense. Okay, that would follow the kind of logic of Lear's character arc and Gloucester's character arc up to this point. Okay, the problem is that logic is partially followed. The problem is it isn't perfect. It isn't satisfactory. And we'll talk about some ways in which it isn't perfect and why Shakespeare would have chosen to do that. What it means that he chose to do that, right? Which is a very important question for your upcoming essay about the meaning of this play as a whole. Okay, so the question we should be asking ourselves very simply in Act 5 is, how does Shakespeare continue to develop the thematic compression in Act 5 of the play? All right, so let's talk about some of the basic events of that play. All right, Act 5 begins after Edgar has killed Oswald, messenger and servant of Goneril, who carried a secret message from Goneril plotting Albany's death. Edgar takes that letter, disguises himself yet again as a peasant, and approaches Albany in the camp of Regan and Edmund, all right, where he is reluctantly leading his men to fight against the invading French army. Okay, Albany is not sure that this is the right thing to do. He's increasingly persuaded that he is on the wrong side. Okay, and Edgar approaches Albany and gives him a letter that basically incriminates Edmund and Goneril, and says that they are trying to kill Albany. Right, so that's pretty bad news, right? The people close, like your wife, is trying to kill you. It's pretty jarring news. And Edgar says, right, I will produce, or there will be a champion who will defend these claims in a trial by combat. Okay, so a trial by combat is basically an old school way of dealing justice in the ancient and medieval world. And essentially what it did, all right, is it in an issue that was like he said, she said. Like, for instance, Goneril could just say, "I didn't write that," right? You don't have CSI to come in here and do like an objective handwriting analysis. Well, someone copied my handwriting. I didn't write that, right? Well, in this sort of without those kinds of objective measures, a trial by combat helped weed out false claims. Okay, because if someone's going to stake their life, grab a sword for something, typically it means that they really, really believe that thing to be true. Okay, and Edgar says, right, I will. There'll be a champion who will defend these claims in a trial by combat. Okay, there's someone who will stake their life on the truths in these letters. All right, so Albany again. Sort of ambivalently goes into the fight against the French, and the fight against the French unfolds in the next act, all right? And weirdly, Albany and Regan's forces, which are being led by Edmund, defeat Lear and Cordelia and her husband, the King of France's forces, okay? Which is, again, something that doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really follow the logic of there being sort of blessing waiting in the wings, reconciliation, redemption waiting in the wings for those that follow the law of love. Wouldn't it have made sense if Shakespeare was trying to develop this theme that the natural world it has a kind of essential, basic moral code that is generally revealed to human beings, that they ought to behave certain ways? If that was indeed true, if that was the point of the play, wouldn't it follow that Edmund, Regan, Albany, Goneril, they should all die by the sword, right? They should all lose. Well, they don't. All right, and Cordelia and Lear are captured and imprisoned, and Edmund orders a man privately, a captain, to kill them. All right, to kill them in secret, to kill them without necessarily some kind of trial. They're not like convicted of treason or anything of that nature, right? He just says, just kill them, right? Get rid of them. Albany enters after the battle and confronts Edmund about the alleged plot on his life, okay? Now, it's another kind of interesting element of the drama that Albany does this after the defeat of Lear, right? It would have, again, made more sense if Albany confronted Edmund prior to the battle and then disinjected his troops from the fight and severely undercut the power of Edmund's forces. But he does it afterwards. That's stupid. Albany confronts Edmund, okay, and throws down the glove, right, challenging his life to a trial by combat. All right, and meanwhile, Regan is growing increasingly sick, right? Regan and Goneril are openly fighting for Edmund in front of Albany. uh, and Goneril has poisoned Regan. Okay, so as they're drinking their victory wine, apparently Goneril has slipped some poison into her sister's goblet, and Regan is growing sick, increasingly ill, and she exits the stage and dies off stage. All right. Meantime, Edgar shows up in complete armor once again, in disguise, to fight Edmund in the trial by combat. All right. Edgar beats Edmund. Okay, all right. Bad guys lose, good guy wins. All right. And then he reveals his identity. Okay, wow, the world seems to be returning to a kind of sanity. Okay, it's me, it's Edgar. I pretended to be poor Tom. I pretended to be the peasant. Gloucester, my father, is dead, and it's all because of Edmund's treachery. He is a garbage can. I am good. And everyone goes, good on you, Edgar. You're a good guy. Kent rushes, okay, and then Edmund, all right, reveals that he has commanded that Cordelia and Lear be killed. A messenger rushes in to announce that Regan and Goneril both dead. Regan died from poisoning, Goneril of suicide after hearing that Edmund's been defeated and mortally wounded. She's got nothing left to live for. She's obviously a traitor, going to live the rest of her life in prison. Not so great for her, so she kills herself. Kent rushes in, again, no longer in disguise. Everyone is who they seem to be now. And he's looking for Lear, as ever, right? Loyal Kent. And Edmund says, all right, oh shoot. Well, not really, oh shoot. But I commanded for them to be killed. And now that I'm dying, I want to do one good thing. And that is, I want you to go and stop Lear and Cordelia from dying. All right, here I am on death's doorstep. I've never done a good thing in my life. And though it is against my nature to do something good, for some reason, Edmund is compelled to tell them that Lear and Cordelia are on the way to dying. Okay? But this tiny little moment of redemption for Edmund is undercut because it's too late. Cordelia, right, the rightful queen of the kingdom, the most faithful child, the best person in the narrative, aside from or alongside Edgar, is dead. And Lear, okay, the man who should be dead, the old bat, whose moral failures and political miscalculations are the whole reason why this has happened in the first place, is carrying her in his arms. Okay? The order, in other words, is partially carried out, but Lear's not killed, Cordelia is. The exact wrong person dies. And then, exhausted by grief, Lear dies alongside his faithful daughter. The kingdom is left in the hands of Kent and Edgar. Albany basically says, you guys rule. And the play ends. Interesting resolution to the play. Lots and lots of good stuff to think about and talk about here with respect to Shakespeare's central theme. Hope you guys have an excellent day. Like I said, it's a nice short class. Might be a good day to do some reading, all right, in preparation for our analysis and your test on Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday of next week. Have an excellent day.